Good evening, good afternoon, or in fact, good morning, depending on where in the world you are joining us from today. I'm Rachel Sanderson, and as Deputy Vice Chancellor for External Engagement and the University of Glasgow Sanctuary Champion, a role that has responsibility for supporting our refugee and asylum seeker community, it is my great pleasure to welcome you to our latest instalment of the World Changing Glasgow Conversations series. Launched in 2020, World Changing Glasgow Conversations is our online event series which seeks to connect colleagues, students, friends, partners and alums from across our Team UofG community with the aim of delivering change and creating impact through meaningful debate and discussion. And since its inception, the topics covered as part of the series have ranged from the search for the COVID-19 vaccine and reparative justice to women in leadership, and have provoked highly insightful and stimulating discussions, which I'm sure will absolutely be the case for tonight's event as well. And this latest instalment in the series, Compassion into Action, Embracing Collective Action to Support Refugees Seeking Sanctuary, has been organised as part of our week-long programme of events to mark Refugee Week 2023 during its 25th year anniversary. And I'm delighted to say that in November of last year, the University of Glasgow was awarded University of Sanctuary status and committed to an ambitious 3-year action plan, which included an institutional commitment to celebrating Refugee Week through a series of dedicated events that are open to our staff, students, partners, alums, and friends of the university. So building on the official theme of Refugee Week 2023, and its focus on the importance of collaboration and connectivity, today's discussion will explore how through collective action we can work together to ensure that we support those who are seeking sanctuary. And to help me address this incredibly important topic, and one very close to my own heart, I am joined by a panel of experts who I will now take the opportunity to introduce. So I am delighted that we have with us this evening Sabir Zazi, CEO of the Scottish Refugee Council, Gun Organ, Volunteer Development Coordinator at Scottish Refugee Council and Coordinator for Scotland and Northern Ireland for City of Sanctuary UK, and Mohammed Verchandi. Mohammed is a sanctuary scholar and a student at the University of Glasgow, and I am enormously appreciative to each and every one of them for taking the time to join us today for this conversation. I'm also delighted to say that joining us in the audience, we have alumni and friends from across 21 different countries, which is fantastic. And as you can imagine, I have many questions, but we absolutely do encourage you to actively participate in today's discussion using the chat function to submit any questions that you may have for our expert panel. We'll do our best to answer as many of them as we can during the next hour. We never have enough time for this discussion, but please do pop your questions into the chat function if you have any. But to kick us off, I would like to begin by asking all panelists to provide their personal response to the official theme of Refugee Week 2023, compassion, and its particular emphasis on collaboration and collective action. So I wonder if I can ask each of you in turn just to say a little bit about yourself, your organisation, but also to say, based on your own experience and expertise, what you believe some of the key actions and measures we can be taking to enhance support offered to those seeking sanctuary in Scotland and the wider UK. So Sabir, if you don't mind, I may start with you just to say a little bit about Scottish Refugee Council and what some of your takeaways are in terms of approaches that we can adopt to better support those seeking sanctuary. And before you come in, can I also just say that I love your t-shirt. I need to get myself one of these Refugee Week t-shirts as well. It's fabulous. And Sabir, I'm going to hand over to you.
Thank you, Rachel, and good evening, good afternoon, and good morning to people in the audience. I'm delighted that I'm able to join you today at this really important and poignant conversation. My name is Sabir Saze. I'm the Chief Executive of Scottish Refugee Council. And it's a real source of pride that I work with such a fantastic team of staff and volunteers, but also our wider friends and stakeholders, including the brilliant University of Glasgow, to continue to advocate for a better world for people forced to flee their homes. I'll tell you a little bit about myself and my journey and the work of Scottish Refugee Council and what we need in the current context to advocate for a more humane, effective, efficient system for people to seek protection. So, as we gather today, colleagues, friends, ladies and gentlemen, uh, it's important to acknowledge that there are over 110 million people forced to flee their homes globally. That is 110 million people, people like you and I, people with hopes and aspirations, but also people with profound fear and anxieties and loss, but also people with hopes, dreams for a better life. They don't all want to cross international borders. They don't all want to arrive in the UK or in Scotland. But those of them that do arrive on our shores and they find themselves here, we need to be able to treat them with decency, dignity, and respect. So, Scottish Refugee Council is Scotland's national refugee agency, and we work with people from all backgrounds and all conflicts and oppressions. We offer a wide range of support for people seeking protection. We have a free helpline for people that have newly arrived in Scotland. We offer family rights services. We support parents and their families throughout the asylum process. Uh, we offer that longer term support as people get through the uh, longer journey of integration. So we offer integration support services that helps uh, with rights, basically helping people to have access to their rights, such as housing, health, education, learning English language, but also uh, building those meaningful social connections. We support people with employability. We're not an employment agency, but we work with lots of employers to make their procedures accessible and to people seeking sanctuary. We also offer a bespoke service, the Scottish Guardianship Service, working with children, trafficked children, and also people, children with their families. And we offer a destitution service as well. So Scottish Refugee Council supports people seeking refugee protection in Scotland, and we provide advice and a listening ear to people who are rebuilding their lives in Scotland. We also campaign for a fair and humane asylum system, and we work to support a movement of people dedicated to making Scotland a more welcoming place for people to live, no matter what conflict they're fleeing, no matter which route they've taken. But as long as they find themselves here, we're here to work with everyone across the board to offer people that warm Scottish welcome. So I can stop at that, Rachel. I can maybe offer some of the solution and what could be done at a later stage, if that's okay.
No, that's perfect, Sabir. Thank you so much for that introduction to the work of the Scottish Refugee Council, which is absolutely pivotal. And you mentioned there 110 million people globally who are forced to flee their homes because of conflict, persecution. I mean, it is both an eye-watering figure and a really heartbreaking one. And the human cost involved in that is just incredible. And so I think, as a society, we need to quite quickly get to some of the solutions and ways in which we can be better supporting those that require sanctuary in the UK. And I just wanted to advocate for the really important work that the Scottish Refugee Council do nationally. And I'll be really keen to come back to you and discuss that in a little bit more detail in just a moment. But Gun, I may just turn to you now, if that's okay, with the same question. And maybe you want to do that by introducing a little bit about the City of Sanctuary and Universities of Sanctuary initiatives and what the work of those organisations deliver across the sector, in particular in Scotland and the UK. But Gun, over to you.
Thank you, Rachel. Nice to meet you, everybody. I'm assuming there are quite a lot of Glasgow University connected people on screen today. I myself did my PhD there, finished in 1997, which is showing my age a little bit. And that's my time as a student at Glasgow. I'll start with a personal story. My part-time job as a student was always as an interpreter. I'm from Turkey and I was a Turkish interpreter. And that was my first contact with people seeking asylum, going through the asylum process in Glasgow and Scotland. And I didn't know at the time that changes in life, many migrations and changes would eventually bring me to work in the refugee sector in Scotland in 2005 when I started working at Scottish Refugee Council. And eventually I am now a person with two jobs, as quite a lot of us are in the charity sector. I work at Scottish Refugee Council and also at City of Sanctuary UK, as Rachel mentioned. Now, City of Sanctuary UK is as its name suggests, is a UK-wide refugee sector organisation. It's an umbrella organisation. So we support and provide resources and networking opportunities for local refugee support groups and organisations across the UK. We have resources, online events, and a very busy life of communicating with individuals and groups and connecting them with one another. And our overall aim in doing this work is really to contribute to a social movement across the UK that aims to make the UK a more actively welcoming place for people seeking asylum and for refugees. And by actively welcoming, what we mean is I urge you to think of the idea of welcome not just as an idea, as a state of mind, as a feeling, but welcome as an activity. What does welcoming actually mean? If you live in a community, if you work in an institution, if you live in a city, if you are a policy maker, if you're a university professional, what does welcome mean in your own institution? And we aim to work as part of this ethos. We aim to work with institutions across the UK whose primary field of work may not be refugee support, but who come into contact with refugees as part of that work. And universities, schools and libraries and colleges and health centres and many, many more institutions do. And this leads me hopefully neatly into talking about our Universities of Sanctuary model. So our work with universities is based on the idea of the Sanctuary Award, University of Sanctuary Award that Rachel mentioned, that University of Glasgow has applied for and was awarded fairly recently. That encourages an institution to go through a self-assessment and self-development process where we ask an institution to really build connections across its campus with academics, with professionals, with students, and also outside of campus with refugee-led groups, refugee individuals, and refugee support organisations to find out how the university can best support refugee welcome in the city it's based in, and also refugee engagement within the university. So that could be, I like to think of it as a campus-wide and a campus-deep activity. So that could be anything from offering scholarships to people in the asylum process and to refugees who otherwise would not be able to engage in study. Also teaching about forced migration in appropriate departments across the university, encouraging research about forced migration, refugee studies and human rights, but also encouraging student activism. So that could be a Human Rights Society or an Amnesty Society or a Star Society, Students Action for Refugees, which is a UK-wide group of student societies, and really involving that student voice and the lived experience voice of people like Mohammed, who's going to speak later in this session, in universities' activities, strategic direction, and its outreach, and really in feeding back about how well the university is doing its job in welcoming refugees actively. I'll leave it there for just now, I think, Rachel. Well, actually, you had said, I want to say a couple of blue sky things, if that's okay. What can we do to welcome people? We're urging people this Refugee Week to, it is going to sound quite blue sky. It's to think about, if you listening to this call are thinking about what you can do, I urge you to get connected. So think about the refugee networks and organizations in your area. And I also urge you to speak up. So that could be speaking up at events like this, or writing to your MP, or going to various public forums and meetings to really speak about refugee issues and what can be done locally, nationally, and politically.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for that overview, Goon. And I really like the idea of welcome as an action. So it is not just a feeling, it is a doing. It is a doing something to ensure that everyone feels welcome, included, safe, supported, and that is absolutely what we seek to do as a University of Sanctuary. And I am incredibly proud that the University of Glasgow is a University of Sanctuary. I think it speaks to our values as an organisation, but it also speaks to our ambitions. We have really committed to a comprehensive action plan that looks to be really bold in terms of the initiatives that we deliver to support refugees and asylum seekers within our community. And that is not just students, that is actually staff members as well, through working with a range of NGOs. And I'll say a little bit more about that when the time comes. But you also mentioned the importance of scholarships. And so I am really delighted that we have Mohammed joining us today. And Mohammed, once again, thank you so much for being willing and able to share your own lived experience with us, because I think that is incredibly powerful. But you are one of our Sanctuary Scholars, and for those that don't know, the University of Glasgow has a number of Sanctuary Scholarships. We award those to those who have refugee status or are seeking asylum within the UK. They are a tuition fee waiver, so in effect there are no fees paid irrespective of whether you are studying an undergraduate or postgraduate level. We also provide a financial stipend on an annual basis and free accommodation for the duration of your programme for those that require it as well. So Mohammed, thank you so much again for being with us this evening. And I wondered if you could just share some of your own experience with us and also give us an insight into what you think would be most meaningful in terms of support that could be provided to our refugee and asylum seeker community.
Hello everyone, I'm Mohammed. I hope you're having a wonderful time with your beloved one, a good summertime. And I would like to take the advantage of this time to express my deepest condolences and grief for a tragedy that happened in the Mediterranean Sea. And there was a wrecked ship. I think everyone knows about that. And we lost many people there. And they were seeking asylum. And they were trying to find their future in Western countries in Europe. It's a very big tragedy, and I'm not going through it right now. I just wanted to express my feeling about that because I crossed the borders of my country with Turkey, and then I crossed the sea border with Greece, and then I crossed the channel to come to the UK. So I can understand their situation, and it's really big tragedy but that happened, and and today the, let's say, greatest gift the university has given me today is take the opportunity to use my voice for voiceless, for those who are outside the university and they are more capable than me, they are more talented and gifted than me, but they were not lucky enough to get a scholarship from a university because the number of a scholarship is limited, and so they cannot be provided to everyone. So, and at the same time, I would like to be the voice of Afghan girl in Afghanistan, that they are banned from education and studying, and women's rights in Iran and all other people all around the world. And I think the issue of immigration is going to be continuing, and this is not the end of the story, and we will have more forced migrants, as Saber said, even for studying. Even for studying, people are going to flee their countries because of extreme rulers of the country. Today, I'm going to talk about my experience. I'm not at the position of Saber or going to have a role to support refugees. I'm an asylum seeker myself, and I'm just going through difficulties that we are facing as asylum. And I think it's good to let you know what's people's expectation and asylum seekers' expectation from their end, and I can be a representative of them in this session. If it's acceptable. Based on my experience, many people believe forced migrants and asylum seekers are a burden for the country, and even some people believe they are criminals. For sure, we bring some burden for taxpayers. Yes, I can understand that, and that's a big concern. But at the same time, we can bring a lot of opportunities to the country. For example, a country like UK, and with the age that you can see, most people are old and they need youngsters to work and youngsters to take the roles and help the country and be beneficial for the country. And by giving this opportunity, like the scholarship, for them to study, we can enable those ambitious people to be part of the society and help society to go ahead. And I'm very fortunate to have this scholarship, and I thank the University of Glasgow for letting me to continue my studies. And this gives me a big opportunity and hope for my future. When we come to another culture, we find ourselves in a very vulnerable situation, and as I found myself in this situation, and it was very drastic time for me, and I was totally hopeless. And after getting this scholarship, some hope came to my life, and I became a bit hopeful to my future. And now I think I'm going to contribute my knowledge and my understanding to this country and my perspective to this country, and I can be a useful person to be integrated into society. About the barriers we are facing as asylum seekers, the first and foremost is the language barrier. Language barrier is a very big one. Even if we know English, for example, for someone like me who knows English for a intermediate level, I'm not a native speaker. I'm always facing difficulties with people, especially when I go from a location to another location. I see difficulties when I see different dialects and different accents, and I'm still struggling with this issue until the time I feel more comfortable. And I'm really happy that some organization where Saber is working with refugees here are providing some language classes. And another thing I can mention, and I think it's on the humanitarian organizations' responsibility and NGOs' responsibility, is to clean up people's mind about refugees and asylum seekers and about the limits they are facing. It's good to separate refugees from asylum seekers because there are more limits and restrictions for asylum seekers than refugees. Refugees are when the asylum seekers are going to get acceptance from the country, and for example, for an ambitious person who wants to go through medicine career, there is no hope in this country. If someone wants to pursue her dreams or his dreams to become a doctor, government is going to provide only two GCSEs, which is English and math. Because I don't want to talk only about myself. I had my bachelor from my country, but some people don't. So when they arrive in the UK, government is going to provide support for only two GCSEs. And then after that, if they want to go for more, they need to have support, so financial support. And as long as they are not allowed to work as asylum seekers, they are going to face more difficulties. And I think universities need to reconsider this thing, especially for subject like medicine or other uh, other restricted subjects that are not going to provide to asylum seekers, to make them feel on the same page with the other citizens. This type of difference is going to make them more anxious and to bring a lot of let's say trauma about what happened to them, why they are here, and this is going to bring more burden for NHS and for government as well at the end. These are some of the difficulties people as asylum seekers are facing, and I think that's enough for me to talk. I'm going to talk if I have another chance. Yeah.
Thank you, Mohammed. You will absolutely have further opportunities during the course of today's discussion. And can I just say thank you for giving voice to the voiceless. Your voice is enormously powerful, and you very eloquently set out some of the challenges being faced by refugees and asylum seekers coming to the UK. So thank you so much for sharing your own personal experience with us. I do just want to say a few words about some of the work that the University of Glasgow is doing in this regard. And partly because it will help me to answer some of the questions that have been popped into the chat. So we do have some questions from the audience. Thank you so much for those. Please do keep them coming. One of the questions was from John Cairns. John, thank you. This was actually asking us about the sanctuary scholarships that Glasgow has on offer. Right now we have 20, which doesn't seem an awful lot, but we started off with 4 and then 8. We're now at 20 sanctuary scholarships, and our ambitions are to look at growing those significantly over the course of the next few years. What I will say is that in addition to institutional investment, we are absolutely grateful for philanthropic support. And in fact, most recently, we have had donors who have really wanted to commit support to refugees and asylum seekers through our sanctuary scholarships. So if there is anyone that is interested in finding out more about that, please don't hesitate to get in touch. And to everyone that is already so generously giving, thank you very, very much. Your contribution is having a transformational impact on the lives of those seeking sanctuary within our community. So thank you. The other thing that I wanted to raise was just that important point around English language. So there are a few things that Glasgow are trying to do to support those that are coming without the requisite level of English language to be able to continue with their studies. We're just about to roll out a new pilot programme. We actually provide free English language classes already to those that require it. But again, we don't have enough places. So we're looking at significantly expanding that programme. And for those that have substantially less English than those that would usually be coming into a university degree. So we are broadening out our English language provision for refugees and asylum seekers. We also provide free places on our Access programme. So again, that will be students who are coming and who want to continue their studies, but don't have the appropriate level of qualification to go directly into year one of our undergraduate programme. They can actually come through one of our Access programmes, and on completion of the Access programme, gain automatic entry to University of Glasgow degree. So that just provides a little bit of context to some of what we're doing as a university, in recognition that there is always more that we can and should be doing, and that we want to do and we will do. But just to share a little bit about some of the commitments that we have made to date. And maybe just turn to Goon, because of course we are one of many universities of sanctuary across the higher education sector in the UK. And you mentioned welcome already. Can you maybe just say a little bit about what role you think universities play in building a culture of welcome, both within our immediate community, but also nationally and globally as well? And what do you see as some of the best practice that's coming out of the sector?
I'd say, Rachel, that it cannot be underestimated that universities have a symbolic significance in their communities. There's the idea of prestige that comes with a university, what the university says and does. And I know the University in Glasgow particularly has very close links with the community of Greater Glasgow. Having both studied and taught there, I know how people of Glasgow and the wider Greater Glasgow area feel about the University of Glasgow in particular. So there is that sort of steering, leading voice that university can have, certainly in the political with a small p sphere. And if a university is seen to welcome and reach out and celebrate, I think that has to have an effect on wider society. And also, I have to say, when we talk about the teaching of forced migration at a university, we don't necessarily want to confine that to academic and research and social science-based departments, important as those are. We're also talking about universities, the fact that university is educating future professionals who are going to be coming into contact with refugees as part of their profession. They are going to be lawyers dealing with immigration. There are going to be social workers supporting refugee families, teachers who are going to be teaching children who have just arrived from zones of conflict or from refugee camps after a long stay at a refugee camp. The youth workers who work with the young people who've had lives of limbo, perhaps in between countries and difficult journeys. The list really goes on. Psychologists who are going to be dealing with people, supporting people who've had trauma. Really, the reach of a university into society in terms of the people and the profession it graduates is impossible to overestimate. As well as that, I work as a volunteer coordinator with Severe. Student volunteering is an incredibly powerful thing in all sorts of ways, and skills, time, energy, and passion that students bring to all sorts of refugee sector organizations. We're lucky that students feel very strongly, generally, about human rights and inclusion and equality and the rights of access. So we're very appreciative of University of Glasgow students and other students across the world to be able to do that. And that's also that volunteering is often the first steps towards a career that perhaps has strong links with human rights activity in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for that, Goon. And that links into a question that Jen T has asked on the chat, which is, outside of providing opportunities to study, what else do you think universities can be doing to enhance engagement with and support for our local refugee communities? And one of the things that I was going to raise was volunteering, both student volunteering and staff volunteering. And I know that we have many within our community here in Glasgow that do volunteer with integration units. For example, we have Mary Hill Integration Unit that's very close by to the university. And through that, it could be there providing support for English language learning, for example, or support in navigating what is an incredibly bureaucratic process to going about to seek asylum or to gain refugee status in the UK. And we also work very closely with NGOs such as Refugee, who do a phenomenal job in providing that very warm kind of Glaswegian welcome to those seeking sanctuary in this city. And so there's lots of ways where we are trying to engage through partnership. And I think we really recognise that this is not something that can be addressed in isolation. We can all do something individually within our own organisations, but collectively we can deliver so much more. And working in partnership with government, with NGOs, with other higher education universities, locally, nationally and internationally, is a way in which we're really going to see tangible impact and a difference made. And so, you know, when I talk about the work that we do at Glasgow, I recognise that we don't do that work alone. We do it in partnership with a range of individuals and organisations, and that is hugely, hugely important. I also wanted to pick up one final question in the chat before turning to Sabir, if I may. And that's Mary Dixon has asked whether there are any multidisciplinary networks researching forced migration across the university and if it's possible to be involved. Yes, absolutely. So if you haven't heard of GramNet already, then please do a quick Google search around GramNet. So GramNet is Glasgow Refugee Asylum and Migration Network, which brings together a range of researchers who are looking at forced migration. There is some fantastic, fantastic research, fantastic engagement events that happen through the GramNet network. And if you have a search online and you still have some unanswered questions about how to engage, then please don't hesitate to get in contact with me directly, and I'm really happy to make those connections within the university. But Sabir, I want to come back to you because you said at the beginning, okay, there are a lot of challenges, and there are a huge amount of challenges that have already been articulated by each and every one of you. But what do you see as some of the solutions? What could we be doing differently? What are some of the opportunities for refugees and asylum seekers, particularly in Scotland? I guess, you know, I don't want to spend too much time focusing on the introduction of the illegal migration bill in the UK last year. I mean, we could spend a little bit of time thinking about how we can best inform government policy. You know, it does feel like we're going backwards as opposed to moving forwards as a nation. But what do you think that we could be doing to help respond to some of the challenges that have been laid out?
Thanks, Rachel. I think from a university perspective, I would say universities are a microcosm of our society, and whether you like it or not, you're the welcoming faces of our cities and our communities. So if one thing that could be done alongside everything else that Goon and Mohammed mentioned, which I don't want to repeat, is reclaiming that narrative. That is very, very important, because alongside all the regressive policies, what we do get is a very inflammatory language expressed at a very senior level. And I think it's a very important role there for the universities to tell a story, to tell the real stories behind the headline of human beings, people who arrive with profound stories of courage, resilience, and hope. And then Mohammed arrived with qualifications. I arrived in the back of a lorry with only 7 years of formal education. But I arrived with that dream and hope to do well, to rebuild my life and contribute. And it is that ongoing journey and search for acceptance that enabled me to do well for herself and contribute. So in a sense, I think what could be done is that there are lots of viable solutions out there. I know sometimes we would hear the likes of the Home Secretary saying that without our policies, there's no other viable solutions. But let me tell you, colleagues, that there are over 20 years of well-researched and peer-reviewed alternatives. And universities do have a role to play to express those alternatives, those more humane, effective, efficient, economically validated approaches as to how we can deal with the global refugee issues, whilst we use the potential and skills of refugees to strengthen our societies, our own resilience as well. So there is a research role, there is a stories role, in terms of what could be done beyond the universities, perhaps in Scotland, in this current very regressive asylum policy context, is there's a number of things. Well, first of all, we need to take a human rights based approach to refugee protection. No matter where the policy, what direction the policy goes in, we need to take that human rights based approach. We need to ensure that we respect our international obligations, we uphold those obligations, and we take a more of an asset based approach to refugee protection. That refugees, no matter what conflict they're fleeing, which route they're taking, what set of qualifications they're arriving with, could make viable contributions to our society. So life as a refugee is not easy. I've gone through it, and so has Mohammed, and I'm sure there will be other people on this call as well who have got this better experience of seeking protection in another country. And people have to survive on £1.30 in the current cost of living crisis in institutional form of accommodation. So Mohammed talked about the burden on the taxpayers. I think it's not people seeking protection who are a burden on the taxpayers. I think it's the private companies who are benefiting from them who are a burden. The institutional accommodation, which is currently accommodating up to about nearly 60,000 people seeking asylum, are paid £3 billion a year. And that £3 billion, imagine investing that in integration of refugees, in support services for asylum seekers, in our community infrastructures to help support people better, provide them better accommodation. Um, it would have benefited everyone. But what we do is we have a very flawed, wrong economic model, which in a way is a human waste, but financial waste as well. Because we have Mohammed in the asylum system. I think it's shameful that somebody like him is kept in limbo. We're missing out on his potential, but then we're paying someone to keep him in that limbo. So no one is benefiting. No one will see the sight of that money that goes to these companies to make life difficult for people seeking asylum. So I think we could have a better model and approach. In terms of the tragedies which Mohammed mentioned, I also want to pay my tribute to the families and the individuals and people affected. It is tragic. We've all gone through some really perilous moments in our journeys, and each time a tragedy happens, it takes us right back to those moments of fear we have had. Uh, I think, yeah, again, those could be avoided because if you look into the numbers and the people and the populations within that tragedy, again, we're talking about people fleeing places like Afghanistan, like Iran, many other conflicts, Syria, Iraq, all of these. I think we could provide safe routes for people to seek protection. We could make resettlement more accessible. And we have a model of it, the response to Ukraine. We were able to bring over 100,000 people from Ukraine, from Hong Kong, and why that similar approach could not be adopted to other refugees as well. So a meaningful, functioning resettlement program. And the only time the other element is family reunification. So we've got a Ukraine family scheme, and there's no Iranian family scheme, there's no Afghan family scheme, there's no Eritrean family scheme. it is in all our cultures to reach out to our families in moment of need. The only time I could meet my dad was thanks to University of Glasgow, when I was receiving a honorary doctorate, and he was still refused a visitor's visa, but we managed to bring him over just a couple of days before the graduation ceremony, and that then led to that really inspiring image that we could be kinder, we could be looking at people as people with family, friends, and so on. So I think there is that. Also, asylum seekers are denied the right to work. So I think, yeah, lifting the ban on people seeking asylum, easing family reunification, making resettlement accessible. Um, and I think here in Scotland, again, the Scottish government also has a role to play. We need to make sure we take a social security approach to asylum. We need to make sure we take a rights-based approach, and also that we live up to our own international obligations too, as a more welcoming place for people seeking protection.
Thank you so much, Sabir. I want to just reflect on a few things that you highlighted there before handing over to Mohammed, who I think is also keen to add some of his own insights. But a few things there. I think, firstly, absolutely, when you look at the way in which, as a higher education sector, we have galvanized in support of Ukrainian institutions, it should provide a model of best practice. Now, at the University of Glasgow, many of you may not be aware, we have actually been twinned with 3 Ukrainian institutions. And through that twinning initiative, we're providing access to our learning and teaching materials, to our library and archives. We are facilitating researcher engagement. We are also hosting a number of Ukrainian students, actually over 120 Ukrainian students in the last academic year and in the next academic year. And again, we are doing so waiving fees, providing accommodation, providing financial assistance. So we are really focused on the long-term sustainability of the Ukrainian higher education sector, how we can be involved in rebuilding post-war, but also ensuring that we are supporting them with meaningful engagement right now, so today, and over the course of the last year and beyond. But I am very aware that everything that we are doing for Ukraine, we can and should be doing for other parts of the world that are facing unrest, conflict, war, and we need to be doing that, and we need to be thinking very mindfully about what that support should look like in those different contexts. You also mentioned, Spirit, I may come back to this if time allows, but about integration. Of course, in Scotland, we do have the new Scots Refugee Integration Strategy, which ended in 2022, and a sort of new iteration of it is being developed now, which I know yourself and others are involved in. But that integration piece is so important. It is not enough just to have those individuals within our community. They need to be fully integrated. They need to be made to feel welcome and safe and supported. So we may be able to come back to some of these themes in just a moment. But Mohammed, I'm really keen to bring you in as well.
Thank you. May I start talking? Okay. So, yeah, I would like to talk about some manipulation issues. And, I don't want to, I'm not a politician, okay? And I'm not going to talk about politics. But I just want to let you know what's going on about right to work for asylum seekers after 1 year of seeking asylum when they don't have the decision yet. For a person like me who is waiting for more than 20 months here in this country, I've got my right to work after 1 year. I requested that, and they provided me with right to work. But what's the right to work? Right to work is a shortage of occupations. And when you go to the list of shortage occupation, I'm just going this, okay, it's because I think universities can do something for this, and because they have their strong relationships and friendships and let's say relations with those powerful people in parliaments or other places, and universities are strong, and they can brought these things into the center of attention. uh, Government is going to give us as asylum seekers right to work after 1 year of seeking asylum if we We are still waiting for the decision to come out. But this type of right to work is not a right to work. For example, at the moment, I have this type of right to work, but when I go to the list is full of job like scientists and things like that. And but even as a master's degree, who I'm going to graduate in September, there is nothing for me, in finance. You know, I think this type of providing right to work is just to keep our mouth closed. Again, that's another kind of feeling separated from the society, and they don't want to give us a chance. And I myself don't feel as a person, and we are going to face difficulties. We are going to face anxiety when we are going to find ourselves and to establish our life. And these are all problems we are facing. And at this particular thing, I believe universities can do something because they have their law department, and they have those volunteers in law department, those lawyers and lecturers that they do have doctorate in law, so they can be our let's say our tongue, they can be our voice, and they can bring some changes in to the system. This is what I wanted to say regarding this change. And there are a lot to say, but I don't want to waste the time.
No, thank you, Mohammed, and absolutely no time wasted. I think it's a really important point to land with the audience. And Gun, I may just ask you to say a few words, because obviously we're now kind of moving into that territory of government policy. Do you think universities can do more to influence and to advocate alongside NGOs to government to ensure that we actually have the right supporting framework in place for refugees and asylum seekers who come to the UK? Is there more that you think we could be doing?
I absolutely think universities can be very strong campaigning voices. Universities can certainly lend a voice to join existing campaigns. Can join the Together with Refugees campaign as the campaign. There's a campaign coalition that's open for membership with advertised campaign movements and periods that universities can give voice to. That's one example. One that I know University in Glasgow is already lending its voice to is the UNHCR 15 by 30 campaign to improve refugees' access to higher education globally. And that's another one. We can also look more specifically at your context and speak to your students, see what are the particular barriers. Can the university campaign on their behalf, reaching out to other universities to make it a joint campaign? Mohammed there mentioned the shortage of occupation list, which is a list that UK government publishes every year to limit what people can migrate, but what people can get work visas for to come into the country. And this list is applied to people in the asylum process who are already in the country, as if they're trying to migrate in to take those jobs. We think this is patently unfair. And that, I think, would be a very good area of campaign for universities to support their students and their future aspirations. Another one could be actually in the area of student finance, access to student finance for people who are in the asylum process. As Mohammed mentioned before, people who already have refugee status, who've gone through the asylum process, have been recognised as refugees in Scotland today, will have SAS funding, will have access to SAS funding as a home student. So will have their fees paid by the Scottish Government and a living stipend. But if you're in the asylum process, you don't. And the University in Glasgow and many other universities are creating scholarships to support these students have access into the society. But alongside that support given to students right now, I think universities could very well approach the Scottish Government in this case and Scottish Funding Council and say, how about widening access to student finance? That would mean that all people in the asylum process in Scotland would be treated as home students and therefore have support. And the university can then put its efforts and its financial resources to get mileage in other and further areas of enhanced support for those students. I think those would be very good areas of campaign. And,
Yeah,
not local.
Yeah, no, thank you so much, Good. And actually, I do just want to say that at the University of Glasgow, we made the decision to treat all asylum seekers as home students for the purposes of admission, but we need to ensure that there is a policy in place and that consistent approach is applied across the Scottish higher education sector. So thank you for raising that. I'm very, very conscious that we are almost entirely out of time, and I feel like we could continue this conversation for at least another hour. Sabir, I just wanted to come to you lastly, just to say a few words about the importance of Refugee Week, and whether you want to say a little bit about some of what you have planned across the rest of this week, and if there are other ways in which those watching can get involved.
So yeah, thank you, Rachel, and thanks for asking that really pertinent question. So this, I mean, today is World Refugee Day, and there's also coincides with Refugee Week, Refugee Festival Scotland, and Refugee Week across the UK. So, as part of the Refugee Festival Scotland, we've organised a range of events. I think it's over 100 events across Scotland taking place. It's a real opportunity for people to reflect on the powerful stories of courage, resilience, and hope that refugees bring. But I think at the same time, reflecting on our warm Scottish welcome, the fact that people have opened their hearts and their doors to welcome people from Ukraine and other conflicts as well. I think it's that real opportunity to reach out. So my call to people who are here in Scotland, this is an opportunity for you to engage with those events. Yeah, grab a cup of tea or join a dance or a music session or any other art exhibition, and get a flavor of the richness that people bring to our communities and the unique gifts and talents. So the theme for us is hope, and I think hope is beautiful. Hatred is ugly, and we need to make sure that through these interactions that you will be having and people will be having with refugee communities throughout this Refugee Festival Scotland will generate new hope in a really dark moment. So it's not where we've come from, how we have arrived here, and who we are that matters. I think it's where we are heading that really matters. And I think this Refugee Festival and World Refugee Day is very timely for all of us as individuals, but also as institutions and governments to strengthen our commitment to refugee protection. We've been reminded not long ago by COVID how our lives could turn upside down and how we all could be in a very vulnerable situation. These people who are seeking protection are asking for safety, and we're in a privileged position to reach to them with a hand of friendship and welcome. And I think, yeah, I'd encourage people to engage in the. I mean, today this session is as part of the Refugee Festival and World Refugee Day as well. There's lots of online events too, so please do benefit and raise your voice and engage with people. Thank you.
Sabir, thank you. That is a beautiful way to end this very important discussion on World Refugee Day, which is hope. And we always have hope. And I think there is so much more that we can collectively do together. And hopefully we've inspired many of you who have been part of today's event to think about ways in which you may be able to contribute within your own communities as well. Unfortunately, and very sadly, that is all that we have time for today. But before we close this session, I would like to pass on my deepest thanks and gratitude to our panelists for contributing to this crucial conversation and for their hugely insightful comments. An extra special thanks go to Mohammed and Sabir for sharing your own personal experiences with us today as well. I'm really grateful for your openness and your willingness to share your story with us. I know that for me personally, today's discussion has reinforced the importance of the work being done in this area and ensuring that we as a university continue to do all that we can to support those seeking sanctuary. And whilst I'm incredibly proud of the huge amount of progress that we have made in the last few years, we must and will continue to strive to do more and do better. So as Sanctuary Champion here at the University of Glasgow, I would like to take this opportunity to reassure our panellists and all of those watching that the University of Glasgow will continue to work alongside our partners across the higher education sector, in government, as well as NGOs to offer effective and meaningful support to asylum seekers and refugees who choose to make Scotland their home. We will ensure that our university continues to promote a culture of welcome and welcome as an action, where every member of our Team UofG community feels supported to achieve their full potential. I'd also like to extend my thanks to all of you watching. I hope you found today's conversation as interesting and stimulating as I have. Thank you for all of your thoughtful questions. I am sorry that we didn't get through all of those. If you do have unanswered questions, please don't hesitate to get in touch with myself or the other panelists. I'm sure we'd all be delighted to hear from you and to continue the conversation offline. But the aim of our programme of events for Refugee Week is to encourage reflection, discussion and celebration of the strength, resilience and courage of those seeking sanctuary. And I do believe that today's conversation achieved just that. So thank you all so much. Lastly, I'm also delighted to announce that our next World Changing Glasgow Conversation will take place later this year, and it will form part of our Adam Smith Tercentenary celebrations. So more information on that panel will be released shortly. Please do keep an eye on our World Changing Glasgow Conversations web pages. We do hope you'll be able to join us again for that. But in the meantime, thank you so much for your time today. Take care, and we look forward to being connected again soon. Many thanks.
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 Bye.